Welcome to this short ARPA Canada video tutorial about how a bill becomes law in Canada's Parliament. Now, if you're like me, you probably get confused about the steps needed for a piece of legislation to become the official law of the land. Let's start out by looking at a YouTube clip of one member of Parliament introducing her bill.
Seconded by Mr. Ray, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Old Age Security Act Residency Requirement. This motion is deemed adopted. The Honourable Member for Brampton Springdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great honour and pleasure that I introduce a bill
Okay, so what is this particular Member of Parliament doing here by introducing a bill? And how are we as typical Canadians to interact with that? How do we get involved in the whole legislative process? Let's start by having a look at how laws are made in general. Our Constitution gives Parliament the right to make laws in Canada, and Parliament's divided into three parts. We've got the Queen as the head of state, represented by the Governor General. The Queen has to officially approve all legislation for it to become law. Now, the main body is the House of Commons. 308 members of Parliament representing ridings from across the country meet together in Ottawa to come forward with legislation, debate it, vote on it, and this is where you also have an opportunity to have your thoughts reflected in law. The other house is the Senate. Now, the senators aren't elected, but it is important to note that for a bill to become law, it has to be approved in the exact same form in both the Senate and the House of Commons. There's two types of bills. We've got government bills, first of all. These are pieces of legislation that originate in the cabinet. So the Prime Minister or a minister of a certain portfolio introduce these bills, and it's what most of our parliamentary time is devoted towards. About an hour a day goes towards what's called private members' business. And in this time, there's a second type of legislation that can be introduced, and that is what's commonly called private members' bills. A backbencher, someone outside of the cabinet, someone from a different party, is given an opportunity to bring forward legislation. Now, of course, there's many MPs, and they all have their own priorities, so they end up using some sort of a lottery system to decide which MP gets to introduce their particular concern or their bill first. There's 8 steps for a bill to take before it can become law. We're going to look at these 8 steps in more detail. First, we've got the introduction and first reading, and this is when the bill first makes a formal appearance into Parliament. It's simply read and recorded. Nothing else happens. It's not debated. It's not voted on. Gives an opportunity for the public and the other MPs to just be prepared for it. Then we get second reading. This is when the other MPs or senators do get an opportunity to debate it. They speak about the principle of the bill. They don't go into the nitty-gritty details of it. It's then voted on and sent to a parliamentary committee. Now, that's only if it passes. If it doesn't pass, then it's defeated, it effectively dies. Now, at committee stage, a committee gets to hear from expert witnesses, or witnesses who have a particular interest or concern in this piece of legislation. The committee is made up of members of Parliament or senators representing the different parties in Parliament, and they get to, after they've heard all of these witnesses and after they've studied it clause by clause, they get to make a recommendation to the rest of the Parliament. There's 3 basic options. First, they can say that this bill shouldn't even proceed any further. It's got to stop. Or they think it should proceed, but some important amendments have to be made. Or third, it should proceed in the current form that it was in when it came to them. Now, at report stage, these additional amendments, if they're proposed, can be voted on and debated, but also other members of Parliament, even outside of that committee, get an opportunity to bring forward additional amendments. Now, all of these amendments are examined, debated, and voted on. Then comes third reading. Finally, the bill gets to a form where the entire thing as a whole is voted on, and the result of this, if it passes, is that it has completed its journey through that house. At the message stage, it has to repeat that whole process in the other house. So for example, if it started in the House of Commons like most bills do, it moves on to the Senate. At royal assent, the Governor General gives the official stamp of approval on that legislation. What opportunity do you have in this whole process? First of all, you can start it. An idea is needed for a piece of legislation to come forward. And members of Parliament look to us, to interact with them about this. So encourage a member of Parliament to introduce a bill about an issue that you care deeply about. Now, regardless of whether it's your particular issue or not, for all legislation, when it gets to first reading, that's your opportunity to become more educated about the issue. You can not only learn more about it, you can encourage your member of Parliament to vote on it according to how you think is appropriate. It's also a good time to let others be made aware of that particular legislation. Now, when it gets to committee stage, if it's a bill that you have a particular interest or expertise in, you can suggest to that committee that they invite you. Now, you can either appear in person or you can provide a written submission. And third reading, that's your last opportunity to go to your member of Parliament and encourage him or her to vote on this particular bill, to rally other people around you to do the same thing. Now, it's not the end of that bill. It still has to go through the entire Senate, or vice versa if it starts in the Senate, which means you get an opportunity to interact with the members of that house as well. Now, as you're following this piece of legislation, it's very helpful to go to the parliamentary website. Let's go there right now. It's parl.gc.ca. So in our web browser, we're going to go up to the top and type in www.parl.gc.ca. Click on your language, and then at the top you're going to see this main menu. The menu item that we're interested in is the bills. On the left, you'll see there's two divisions. We've got the Senate and the House of Commons. And those are further broken down. We're going to pick the government bills. The government bills are listed by number. We've got C1 through 57 for this session. Now, if you see a higher number like C384, for example, it means it's going to be a private member's bill. If it starts with an S, it's a Senate bill instead of a House of Commons bill. If you click on any of these numbers, you're going to get the information that you're looking for probably. You'll see here with C1, it was an act respecting the administration of oaths of office, introduced by our Prime Minister, and we can see how it looks at first reading. Bill C2, introduced by Cabinet Minister, the Minister of International Trade, and you can see what it looked like at first reading or when it received royal assent. Click on any of those links and you'll get the details you're probably interested in. You can do the same thing for the private members' bills and the Senate bills. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. You'll keep in mind that you have an opportunity to be involved in this from the very beginning. Be proactive. If you build a positive relationship with your member of Parliament, you're able to encourage him or her to pursue the issues that you think need attention. Now, Canada, being a democracy, survives and thrives when you get involved. So keep caring. Sometimes it can be discouraging when you see the lack of interest by your respective political official, or maybe the lack of interest by your friends or your community. But it's very important that you keep caring about the issues that you're passionate about. It's when you keep acting on it, it's when you follow these issues and you interact with them as they make their way through Parliament, that we get a healthy and productive democratic society. Thanks for taking part in this video tutorial from ARPA Canada. Till next time, have a very good day.